It was the year 2020, and our world was at peace. Everything was normal, until these unknown dimensional doors started appearing randomly across the world. We never knew how these seemingly harmless portals would change everything forever. Since we humans are naturally scared of things we don't understand, our powerful nations gathered their military forces, and together we sent thousands of our best soldiers inside these gates to investigate. But only tragedy awaited these poor souls. No matter how much safety gear these soldiers wore, no matter how powerful the weapons they took with them, not even a single soldier ever returned from these gates. All of these lives lost, for no reason, and later, when we finally stopped needlessly sacrificing the lives of our soldiers, things took a turn for the worse. Thousands of monsters poured out of these gates, and our world fell in complete despair. These ferocious beasts caused death and destruction everywhere they appeared. We were helpless. Our modern weapons couldn't suppress these terrifying magical beasts, and chaos reigned supreme for a while. That's when transcendent deities reached out to us. They communicated as a voice in our minds, and these heavenly beings blessed some of us with magical powers and skills. We started calling these transcendent beings sponsors, and humans that were blessed by these sponsors were called hunters. Finally, humanity had the power to fight these monsters on equal terms. The sponsors kept blessing the hunters with stats, healing, and skills, and the hunters kept growing in strength, and they gained unimaginable power. As time progressed, these hunters even began to overpower and vanquish the monsters they once feared. But even among these powerful hunters, there was one hunter that stood out, a hunter who commanded an army of formidable undead monsters with the power to rule over fire. He was called the Demon King, the only hunter who possessed the player trait, unlike other hunters, who could only gain power through the blessing of their sponsors. The Demon King could gain power all on his own, thanks to the player trait. He could level up independently by hunting monsters. And since he had such an overpowered ability to grow without limits, the 12 strongest hunters banded together to take him down. These 12 superhuman hunters considered themselves gods, and they wanted unquestionable control over the whole world. The only one standing in their way was the Demon King. So the 12 fought the Demon King, and after an all-out war, they finally defeated him. But the 12 didn't stop until they wiped out Demon King's existence, even from the annals of history. After this victory, the 12 self-proclaimed gods founded Eden for themselves, and thus our world fell into the hands of these hunters. They declared hunters as the newly evolved humans and forced every normal non-hunter person to become their slaves. And the oppression of the non-hunters went on, and now 100 years have already passed. This is the story of a young boy named Lee, who will follow the legacy of the Demon King, the boy who will finally bring justice to this cruel world.
100 years later, our main character Lee is working hard to become a hunter. He's running through a remote forest, but exhaustion catches up with him. Approaching him is a man with a shiny bald head, Sung Gu-yo, who is also Lee's mentor. He asks if Lee is done already and questions Lee's determination to become a hunter that'll change the world. Lee responds with curiosity, asking Yo if he had to undergo such rigorous training to become a hunter. Yo honestly admits that he was sponsored without much effort, which leaves Lee feeling upset, thinking it's unfair. Yo, in his wisdom, reminds Lee that the world can be unfair. Then he conjures a spear using his inventory skill and hands it to Lee, assuring him that he will become a hunter soon. Lee's motivation comes from a tragic event. His parents were killed by an evil hunter, and they left behind a book that reveals the corruption of the hunters in power. His goal since then has been to overthrow the 12 hunter gods in Eden and change the world. But Lee often wonders if he will ever find a sponsor, recalling the saying from Eden, "Becoming a hunter is like the sky's will." Yo jolts Lee back to reality with a slap, reassuring him once again that he will find a sponsor. Yo also asks if Lee is keeping the book safe. The book, titled The Autobiography of the Demon King, tells the story of a hunter who was erased from history for opposing the 12 gods. Since it was his parents' keepsake, Lee has read it so many times that he knows it by heart. As they converse, an ominous presence appears in the distance, a powerful woman hunter emitting a strong aura, searching for them. She activates her magical abilities and launches a powerful attack. Yo senses the magic power in time and pushes Lee out of harm's way. However, Yo takes the brunt of the attack and is engulfed in a huge explosion of purple flames. The woman lands in front of Lee, and her overwhelming power terrifies him. He wonders why such a powerful hunter is in this place. The woman commands Lee to bow down, and despite his unwillingness, Lee immediately falls to his hands and knees, horrified to see his body moving on its own due to her magic. Suddenly, more hunters appear out of nowhere and greet the woman as Athena, the ruler of Eden. Upon hearing the name Athena, Lee realizes that his fate is already sealed. Athena is one of the original 12 gods of Eden who defeated the Demon King 100 years ago. Athena orders the hunters to find and capture Yo immediately, and they promptly get to work. Then, Athena shifts her attention to Lee, quickly realizing that he possesses no magical power, rendering him insignificant in her eyes. She releases Lee from her magical control and casually walks away. Lee calms down, lifting his head and hoping he's safe now. However, his hope fades when he sees Athena staring directly at him, standing right in front of him. She notes that she sensed a faint trace of magical power and, observing Lee's rapid heartbeat and shallow breaths, demands that he reveal what he's hiding. Once again, Lee's body moves involuntarily, and his hand retrieves the autobiography of the Demon King. He presents the book to Athena, realizing that merely possessing it could lead to a tragic death. Eden has already erased the Demon King's name from the world's records. As Athena reaches out to take the book, terror grips Lee's heart as he anticipates what will happen next. Suddenly, the book unleashes flames, but Athena easily deflects them with a wicked smile. She recognizes it as the autobiography of the Demon King. However, just as she moves in to grab the book, Yo launches a powerful attack at her, sending her crashing into the distance. Lee looks at Yo with tears in his eyes, but Yo teases him for crying. Lee asks how Yo can go toe-to-toe with one of the 12 gods, but Yo has no time to explain. He hands Lee the book and reminds him of his desire to change the world. Yo then reveals a sword, discussing the world they live in, where hunters treat non-hunters like insects. He asks Lee if he's willing to accept the power that rivals the 12 gods to change this world. In silence, Lee contemplates Yo's question. Athena recovers and heads straight for them. Yo urges Lee to make a decision, and with determination in his eyes, Lee answers with a resounding yes. Hearing this, Yo smiles and suddenly stabs Lee through the heart with the sword. With the sword piercing him, Lee starts glowing with a golden light. He is unable to comprehend what's happening as his body vanishes from this world. In his ears, he hears a non-human voice that says,
"The contract will be executed as according to the contract. I, the Sky of Apocalypse, will sponsor you."
In a place surrounded by rocks, a golden light emerges, and Lee's body appears out of it, unharmed but dressed in different clothes. Lee struggles to understand what just happened to him when he feels a surge of power coursing through his veins. He recalls the voice that sponsored him and wonders if he has truly become a hunter. As he looks around the strange place, he realizes that he's inside a dungeon gate, also known as a portal. Upon hearing approaching footsteps, he decides to hide behind a boulder. To his shock, he spots a monster for the first time, a formidable-looking goblin. Goblins may be basic monsters, but they pose a significant threat to novice hunters everywhere due to their keen senses and ability to swarm in numbers. The goblin suddenly senses Lee, but Lee uses his wit to distract it with a thrown rock. While the goblin is momentarily distracted, Lee seizes the opportunity, attacking and beheading it with a swift karate chop. Lee stands in awe of his newfound power. He had only intended to strike the goblin to steal its weapon, but it seems like he underestimated the might of a hunter. Suddenly, a voice from nowhere announces,
"The Sky of Apocalypse pays attention to you."
Lee finally comprehends that the Sky of Apocalypse is the same deity that sponsored the Demon King. From a distance, more goblins begin to appear, and as they draw nearer, it becomes clear that it's not just a swarm, but an entire army of goblins thirsty for blood. Lee is stunned by their sheer numbers, with the goblin chieftain standing at the very back. A swarm of this caliber is usually defeated by a hunting party. Despite the seemingly impossible situation, Lee remembers his promise to Yo and regains his resolve. He refuses to die before changing this corrupt world. Since the Sky of Apocalypse is paying attention, it's a rare opportunity to make an impression. A voice resounds, "The sky of apocalypse applauds your spirit." Fueled by his determination, Lee launches himself at the approaching goblin army. With one strike, he slashes one in half and slices another through the shoulder. When a goblin attempts a sneak attack, Lee swiftly deals with it. The goblin wielding a thorn-covered club manages to land a hit from behind, but Lee counters, slicing through the club and defeating the goblin. At that moment, he hears the message, "You have leveled up." In the past, Lee may have been a mere non-hunter, but his prowess with weapons was akin to that of a prodigy. Yo had always told him that he would become unrivaled once he became a hunter. In the present, Lee continues to battle through countless goblins, but not without difficulty, as he stands there battered and heavily breathing. The chieftain launches an attack, and although Lee manages to parry it in time, he is still sent flying backward, and his sword shatters into 2 pieces. Lee sits there, realizing that even though he's fighting a goblin, a boss monster operates on a completely different level. Newly awakened hunters like him are usually ranked E or F, while it takes at least a C rank awakener to defeat the goblin chieftain. In his current condition, how can he defeat such a formidable foe? It's then when Lee spots a spear and decides to launch a single all-or-nothing attack with all his might. A voice appears, "Sky of Apocalypse supports your decision." Sky of Apocalypse grants you the authority over fire. With this newfound authority, Lee can conjure fire. The spear was the Demon King's weapon of choice, and it's the same for Lee as well. Lee charges straight ahead with his flaming spear, successfully piercing through the goblin chieftain's body. As a result, Lee levels up once again, but the spear he used crumbles into dust. Lee has accomplished the seemingly impossible, but it has drained him completely. He collapses to the floor, exhausted from the battle. Later, some hunters arrive and discover the goblin corpses scattered everywhere. As they spot Lee lying there unconscious, they quickly take him to the hospital. In the hospital, Lee's health is gradually restored as they administer a healing potion through an IV. When he finally awakens, lying on the hospital bed, he realizes that this is real, and the past events were not a dream. A nurse enters the room and advises him to stay put. She asks how Lee is feeling and informs him that the hunters from the League Guild rescued him, potentially preventing a dire outcome. The nurse blushes slightly as she recounts the details, mentioning that someone from the Hunter Association will come to question him since the incident occurred inside the gate. She then leaves, clearly impressed by Lee's handsome appearance. Lee calls out to her, asking about the year. The nurse assumes he might be disoriented due to his recovery and informs him that it's the year 2022. This revelation shocks Lee to the core. It's a century before he was even born. The first gate appeared in 2020, just 2 years before this time. He remembers this year 2022 marked the beginning of the era when hunters started making names for themselves. In this age, sponsors were highly active, and this era was known as the Age of Heroes in the future. Lee gets excited and tears off his IV, standing up to go to the bathroom. In the mirror, he sees a different man, much taller and more muscular than before. However, his facial features remain somewhat similar to his past life. Later on, a representative from the Korea Hunter Association named Kim Suung arrives to question him. He notes that Lee was in poor condition when the League Guild found him, which might explain his memory lapses. Kim asks for Lee's name, family, gate number, home address, or any details he can recall. Lee responds by saying he is 23 years old and his name is Jun Kyung Lee, combining the Demon King's name with his own. Kim inquires if Lee remembers anything else, and Lee mentions that he remembers hearing a voice saying, "I will sponsor you." Kim acknowledges that Lee has become a hunter and thanks him for his cooperation. He mentions that the Hunter Association will contact him again and bows down, emphasizing that Lee is now an important person in this world. He looks forward to Lee's cooperation in the future. After Kim leaves, Lee opens his status window. He remembers that the 12 hunter gods sought to destroy the Demon King, partly because of Demon King's special trait, known as the player trait, which allowed Demon King to level up by killing monsters rather than depending on sponsor blessings, meaning he could level up as much as he want. Now Lee also possesses this player trait in his status. The nurse returns, congratulating Lee on becoming a hunter. Lee questions if becoming a hunter is truly a cause for celebration. The nurse explains that it is because even if one doesn't plan to fight monsters, there are lucrative opportunities as a blacksmith creating magic-powered weapons, or even as a bodyguard for the rich and powerful. Lee inwardly worries that this is why non-hunters will be enslaved in the future but maintains a facade of ignorance, smiling as he listens to the nurse. She hands him a gift bag left by the Hunter Association and congratulates him on his discharge. Outside, the world appears much more peaceful and free, unlike the future world where he wasn't even allowed inside major cities as a non-hunter. From a distance, Kim approaches Lee and mentions that there have been cases of hunters losing their memories after being sponsored. The association has made special arrangements for them, and Lee will receive a leased house since he has nowhere to live at the moment. Kim reveals that Lee is now assigned the rank of C as a hunter, which is quite high for beginners. He then takes Lee to the association's office, where Lee completes his registration as a hunter. Kim shows Lee his new home, which turns out to be a pretty nice place. This moment is special for Lee as it's his first time having a place of his own. Kim says that someone is here to meet Lee, but Kim's news left Lee feeling uneasy. The mention of someone wanting to meet him immediately triggered his paranoia, leading him to wonder if another time traveler from the future had appeared. However, his anxiety subsided as Kim revealed that the person in question was the guild master of the League Guild, the very guild that had saved Lee from the dungeon by taking him to the hospital. The guild master soon arrived to meet Lee, and his unmistakable bald head made him instantly recognizable. It was none other than Lee's mentor, Yo, in his younger years, sporting a clean-shaven appearance. Lee couldn't help but fixate on Yo's bald head for a moment too long, and Yo playfully redirected his gaze, remarking that his eyes were down here. Lee quickly apologized for his unintended rudeness and couldn't help but feel that he had encountered Yo much earlier than anticipated. Yo, sensing a hint of familiarity in Lee's face, questioned if he had crossed paths with Lee before. In response, Lee attributed his ignorance to his amnesia, concealing his true identity and extending gratitude to Yo for rescuing him from the treacherous dungeon. In the future, this man Yo Seonggu, also known as Heimdall, was not only Lee's mentor but he was also revered as a hero by many, even though he was believed to be deceased 100 years later. That night, as Lee lay in bed, he came to terms with the fact that he had been reincarnated into the body of the Demon King. Curiosity swirled within him as he pondered the fate of the original Demon King in this new era. While many questions lingered, Lee acknowledged that he now possessed the power to change the world, bringing his lifelong dream within reach. The following day, Lee found himself at the Hunter Association, where he dozed off during a class. He was abruptly awakened by a rugged-looking individual who introduced himself as Bae Sung-soo, their tutorial instructor. The students immediately recognized Bae as a prominent B-rank hunter, prompting them to speculate about his presence. Who is the Hunter Association after by sending a powerful B-rank like Bae? To answer this, each student harbored the belief that they were the chosen one the association was seeking to recruit and groom. Meanwhile, Bae outlined the day's agenda, which included a theory class to review the fundamentals of being a hunter, and after that comes a practical examination. Bae asks, how are the hunters created? And the student answers that they are created through the sponsorship of a transcendent being. Bae then asks, how do the hunters grow stronger? The girl answers, by getting powerful items, closing the dungeon gates, or getting favors from sponsors by impressing them. Bae applauds the knowledge of the students, but his next question silences the whole class. Bae asks, what do you think is the goal of these sponsors? The class is silent because nobody knows the answer. Nobody knows what sponsors gain by helping hunters. It's a total mystery. Bae sees that there is only one guy in the class who is not eager to attract his attention. That guy is Lee, so he forces Lee to answer this answerless question. Lee thinks for a while and says, wouldn't it be for their own entertainment? Everyone is shocked by this answer, including Bae himself. Lee explains further that these sponsors choose people and make them hunt monsters. They watch the people grow and get entertained, just like in video games. Bae is surprised. He has never heard an answer like that. Lee got this idea from the Demon King's book. Demon King thought of this as the biggest secret of sponsors. Next comes the combat exam, and a student is geared up to face a goblin. Bae explains, students don't have to defeat a goblin to pass, since it's too much to ask of the new hunters. They just need to showcase their power and Bae will decide who passes. It's safe because this goblin has been brainwashed, and he won't go for the kill straight away. The goblin runs to attack the student, but she also steps forwards to face it. She launches an attack that the goblin dodges, and the goblin lands a claw attack on her. The girl falls, but when the goblin leaps to attack again, she cuts it in half. She was tricking the goblin to show his opening. The girl falls down exhausted from the battle. Bae is impressed by the girl's skill and she passes. And later on, after all the students have gone through the test, only Lee remains. He steps forward equipped with his weapon of choice, a spear and a shield, knowing that his success in this final trial would determine his graduation's fate. That's when Bei apologizes to Lee, saying that it appears like we have run out of goblins. So Lee will be facing another monster instead, since this monster is too strong. Lee just needs to survive for a while to pass. Bei assures Lee it won't be an issue since Bei is a B rank and he is here to oversee things. The monster is revealed to be a terrifying looking orc, and the students spectating the fight are shocked. An orc is a C rank monster even stronger than a goblin chieftain. What the hell is a monster like that doing in a tutorial? Actually, this is all Bei's plan to test Lee. Turns out that before Lee, there was a hunter who awakened at a B rank, and this hunter quickly became one of the strongest hunters in the world. Now they have Lee, who is also extremely strong, and the association can't let another prodigy like him slip away from their fingers. The fight begins, and the voice appears. The sky of Apocalypse pays attention to you. The orc lunges at Lee, so Lee stabs him in the shoulder. But what's this? The spear is stuck in its muscles, and Lee can't pull it out. The orc grabs the spear and launches powerful attacks at Lee, but he covers himself with his shield. A student thinks this should be stopped, it's getting too dangerous. Bei remarks that Lee's technique might be good, however, he should be ready to face unexpected things when facing actual monsters. Bei then takes out his weapon to end this test, since it's already gone too far. Suddenly Lee surprises everyone as he lets go of his spear, and spins around the orc's punches to land a powerful kick to the orc's head. The kick knocks a tooth out of the orc's mouth, but Lee is not done yet. He leaps into the air, activating his flame authority that coats his shield in flames. With this attack, he smashes through the head of the orc with ease, and the students are amazed watching him, wondering if he really is a newbie hunter like them. Bei is shocked, noticing that Lee used a high-level skill since he didn't even chant before casting it. After this attack, Lee's shield burns to ashes. You have leveled up. Your skill rule over fire has reached level 2. Seeing Lee stand there by the body of the defeated orc, Bei compliments him saying you are an amazing hunter. Meanwhile, Lee realizes that the weapons he uses can't handle his amazing ability, since they all get turned to dust. Turns out, rule over fire was the Demon King's base power, similar to his player trait. This is not just a skill, but something known as authority. Unlike a skill, authority can be leveled up over time. But before that, Lee would need higher quality weapons to use it more than once. At night, Kim and Yo show up for Lee's housewarming party, and they drink and chat through the evening. Kim has officially been assigned as Lee's permanent agent. He tells Lee that for his graduation exam, he will have to go to a gate along with other students. Meanwhile, Yo asks what Lee thinks about his offer to join his league guild. Kim is surprised. Being offered to join a noteworthy guild is a pretty huge deal for a newbie like Lee. But Lee politely declines the offer to join, which shocks Kim even more. Yo asks the reason for turning down his offer, since there are so many benefits of joining the guild, especially if you are planning to become a combat hunter. The real reason is that Lee's plans for the future are dangerous, so if he lets people close they might get caught in the crossfire. He hides the truth and says he declined because he wants to go solo for now. He adds, despite this, he will rush to help Yo if he ever needs him. Yo smiles and says he will remember his words, and the two grow closer while Kim is unable to understand their brotherhood. Why would a legendary Korean hunter like Yo ever need any help from a beginner like Lee? The party continues through the evening,